What if I told you that being a nice manager might actually be the absolute most toxic thing you can do to your team?
I mean, that completely goes against almost every modern leadership instinct we have, right?
Right.
We are constantly told that empathy is everything and smoothing things over is like the key to a healthy culture.
Right. But I want you, the listener, to think about the reality of your day-to-day work. You're sitting at a conference table or maybe staring at a grid of faces on a video call, and you're either about to deliver a really tough performance review or
Or you're on the receiving end of one.
exactly, and it feels like a personal attack. Your heart rate spikes, the defenses just shoot up. Because managing people inevitably means navigating this looming dark cloud of a concept we call accountability,
And we almost always treat it like a necessary evil, like we're just bracing for impact.
which is exactly why we are unpacking a really fascinating new article today from the Phoenix Performance Partners. It's titled Fierce and Tender, The Art of Accountable Leadership.
It's a great piece.
Yeah, it really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle the way you think about accountability. We're going to explore why it's consistently rated as the absolute weakest leadership skill out there and how reframing it, taking it from a mechanism of punishment to a profound act of support can literally change the way you interact with everyone you work with.
Well, and the author sets an incredibly high bar right out of the gate, too. They use this quote from Henry Ward Beecher, a 19th century clergyman, who said, "Hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anybody else expects of you."
I love that. That quote really sets the tone. But
Mhm.
before we can start building a healthier framework for accountability, we have to look at the wreckage of the current system, I think.
Oh, absolutely. The wreckage is everywhere.
Right. We have to understand the mechanics of why it's so fundamentally broken and why, if you manage a team, you probably avoid these conversations like the plague.
Yeah, and the article points to a massive myth that almost all of us have internalized, which is this false dichotomy of the trade-off. We've been conditioned to believe that you have to pick a lane as a leader.
Like, you can't be both.
Right. You can either be the hard-driving manager who demands excellence and gets undeniable results, or
Or you can be the supportive manager who prioritizes psychological safety and who people actually, like working for. The classic tough boss versus cool boss dynamic.
exactly. The assumption is that if you turn up the results dial, you automatically have to turn down the support dial.
Which just isn't true.
It isn't true, and that trade-off is incredibly expensive for organizations. The article brings in some striking Gallup research by Jim Harter and Corey Detell to back this up. They looked at 7 core leadership competencies. Creating accountability was rated dead last.
Dead last out of 7.
The
Why?
absolute lowest rated skill across the board.
That actually tracks with my own experience, honestly. It's the one thing everyone complains about, whether they're managing upward or downward.
Yeah, and it gets even more alarming when you look at how leaders view their own capabilities. Fewer than half of all leaders rate themselves as outstanding or even exceptional at accountability. It is the one area where they feel entirely unequipped.
So what happens in a corporate environment when a leader feels unequipped to handle a difficult interaction? I mean, human nature just takes over, the conflict is avoided.
Yep, the conversation gets postponed, the classic, we'll circle back to this later.
Oh, yeah. Or it gets softened into this really vague, passive-aggressive corporate speak where nobody actually knows what the actual problem is.
Or it just gets skipped entirely, right? We tell ourselves we're being nice by not bringing up a missed deadline or a dropped ball. We rationalize it. We say, oh, they've had a really hard week. They're stressed. I won't add to their plate.
And this brings up one of the most powerful assertions in the entire text. The source calls out that specific behavior and says avoiding these tough conversations isn't actually kindness. It calls it abdication wearing kindness as a costume.
Abdication wearing kindness as a costume. It perfectly captures the illusion.
It really does.
Because when we avoid holding someone accountable, we aren't protecting them. We are protecting ourselves from the discomfort of the conversation.
We're just taking the easy way out.
Exactly. We're abandoning our responsibility to lead, to coach, and to help that person grow. And we're dressing up that failure in the costume of empathy.
But let's look at why we do that. I think part of the problem is just a terrible branding issue with the concept itself.
A branding issue? How so?
Well, just hearing the word accountability makes people clench their jaws. It's visceral. When someone says, hey, we need to hold you accountable, it sounds like you're being called into the principal's office or like someone is reading you your Miranda rights.
No, you're totally right. And the article strips that baggage right down. It points out the literal root of the word. Accountability simply comes from the word account.
Right, like an actual bank account. Or keeping a ledger. I thought that was a really smart reframing, taking it away from this idea of a moral failing and grounding it in objective math.
Yeah, an account is just keeping track of what was promised and what actually happened. There's no blame inherently built into the word. There's no shame. It is literally just reading the ledger.
But because we've attached all this fear and emotional weight to it, we completely misunderstand the concept before the conversation even starts. We just brace for punishment.
We do.
So if we accept that the ledger is just math, and that avoiding the conversation is just abdication disguised as kindness, how does this actually work in practice? The core concept of the source material is this fierce plus tender balance, and it requires you to hold two seemingly opposite things at the exact same time. First, you must be fierce about the results.
Right. And being fierce about results means the goal is crystal clear. The commitment is real. And crucially, you don't quietly let the results slip just because the circumstances get difficult.
Which is what we usually do.
Right. But the article frames this in a way that shifts the entire paradigm. Holding someone to the result is actually a profound form of respect. If you back off the result the moment they struggle, you are silently communicating that you don't actually believe they are capable of delivering it.
That's huge. Lowering the bar isn't a favor, it's a vote of no confidence.
Exactly.
That is a gut punch if you've ever managed a struggling employee and thought you were helping them by taking work off their plate.
It really is. But you can't just be fierce. If you're only fierce, you're just a tyrant demanding perfection. And that brings us to the second half of the equation. You must be tender about the relationship.
Fierce about the result, tender about the person.
Being tender means you are genuinely in their corner. You're actively rooting for them, you're providing resources, and you're ready to coach them through the obstacles.
Yeah.
And most importantly, you treat a missed result as data. It's just information to be solved. It's not a final verdict on their character or their professional worth.
You know, as I was reading through this framework, it reminded me of having a physical spotter at the gym when you're lifting heavy weights.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Think about the physics of it. To get stronger, you need resistance.
Mhm.
If you're struggling on the bench press and the spotter just immediately grabs the bar and lifts the weight for you entirely, they kill the result. You don't build muscle. They backed off the result.
They abdicated their role as a spotter.
Right. But on the other hand, if they just stand there with their arms crossed and let a 200-pound barbell literally crush your chest, they kill the relationship.
And probably you.
Yeah, and probably you.
Yeah.
The spotter has to be fierce about making you finish the rep, but tender enough to keep their hands hovering, giving you just those few ounces of upward momentum so you don't get crushed.
You're right there with them, sharing the burden, but you aren't stealing the rep. And most managers are wired to default to one of those extremes. They either chase the result and let the barbell crush the person, or they over-index on protecting the relationship and lift the weight for them, which lets the result quietly die.
Hmm.
The true mastery of leadership is refusing to choose between the two.
Reading this article, the analogy they actually used to illustrate this completely caught me off guard because it has literally nothing to do with corporate management. They brought up Weight Watchers.
Yeah, Weight Watchers. It's an incredibly effective way to understand the mechanics of this balance, though. Think about how that program is structured. First, you make a clear, specific promise. You commit to losing 1 pound this week.
Which is the fierce part.
That's the fierce part. It's a real, measurable result, not just some vague, nice-sounding intention to focus on your health.
The ledger is established. It's objective.
Right. Then comes the tender part. They coach you on the how. They give you recipes. They talk to you about movement. They provide a whole community of support. And then the critical moment arrives. The next week, you step on the scale. And they simply acknowledge what the ledger says.
No lecture, no screaming.
None of that. If you hit the goal, there is massive encouragement. If you didn't hit it, they don't shame you, but they also don't pretend the scale says something it doesn't. They reconnect you to your why, and they help you try a new approach for the next week. It's a brilliant, repeatable formula. Clear commitment plus honest check-in plus real support equals results achieved.
I totally see how that math works perfectly for losing a pound, because a scale is an objective piece of machinery. But if you're listening to this on your commute and you work in a marketing agency or a tech startup, results are often highly subjective. A project plan isn't a scale. How does this framework survive when you have to actually have the conversation and the ledger isn't just simple math?
Well, to understand how to apply it subjectively, The article contrasts two different scripts a manager might use during a check-in. Let's look at the version without the balance, where the manager only brings fierceness. Imagine sitting down with a direct report and saying, "You missed the deadline again. I need this to stop."
Oof. Yeah, if you say that to me, all I hear is a threat. I'm going to get immediately defensive. I'm not thinking about how to solve the problem anymore. I am thinking about how to protect myself. The main lesson I'm going to learn is that I need to get much better at hiding my roadblocks from you so I don't get yelled at.
Exactly. You've just inadvertently incentivized them to cover up their mistakes. Now, let's look at the script with the fierce and tender balance built in. You say, "We committed to Friday and it slipped. I still need us to land this, and I want to understand what got in the way so we can fix the actual problem. What did you run into?"
Now, on paper, that sounds great. It's fierce about the Friday result, but tender about figuring out the roadblock together. But I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
Because a script is just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
If I am secretly furious with this person, if they've missed 3 deadlines in a row, if I'm exhausted and I have been keeping score for months,
Yeah.
I can hit every syllable of that tender script perfectly. I can say, I want to understand what got in the way. But they're still going to feel attacked, aren't they?
They absolutely will. And this brings us to perhaps the most critical psychological insight in the entire text. Your emotional state matters exponentially more than the vocabulary you're using.
Okay.
Human beings are essentially walking threat detection machines. Long before the cognitive part of their brain processes your perfectly crafted sentence about what got in the way, their amygdala has already processed the tension in your jaw, the flatness of your tone, and the micro expressions flashing across your face.
It's like trying to cover up a blaring fire alarm by playing classical music over the loudspeakers. The words are nice, but the alarm is what they actually hear. They smell the resentment.
That's exactly it. It's underneath the script you are frustrated, if you're scorekeeping, or if you quietly view this person as an inherent problem that just needs to be managed out of the company, no script in the world will save that conversation.
Which means we're moving from management tactics into the actual human soul here.
Mm.
The text poses a core question that you have to ask yourself before you even initiate one of these conversations.
Right. Before you open your mouth or schedule that calendar invite, you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I coming from a place of partnership or a place of superiority?
Partnership or superiority? That is a heavy, uncomfortable question to answer honestly.
It forces you to examine your true motives. Do you actually genuinely want this person to succeed and grow? Or deep down in your ego, do you just want the satisfaction of being right that they fell short?
Wow.
If it's the second one, if you just want to be proven right about their incompetence, you have to fix your own orientation first. As the article states, the technique is entirely downstream of the heart you blend to it.
That raises a massive issue, though. Because if you're listening to this and you work in a high-pressure tech sales environment or on Wall Street, your immediate reaction is probably partnership, heart. We don't have time for this touchy-feely stuff. We have aggressive quarterly quotas to hit. Does fixing your internal orientation actually translate to the bottom line?
Oh, the external results shift dramatically when you do this. It turns accountability from a dreaded managerial burden into a massive driver of team performance.
Literally.
Let's go back to that Gallup data. They found that employees who view their leaders as exceptional at holding people accountable are 3 times more likely to be engaged in their work. We're talking about a jump from 17% engagement to 51% engagement.
Wait, a jump from 17 to 51%? That feels completely backward to how most corporate cultures operate. We assume that holding people's feet to the fire burns them out and makes them disengage. But you're saying being held accountable makes people more engaged.
It burns them out if there's only fierceness and no tenderness. But think about the psychological safety it creates when it's balanced.
Okay.
When people experience accountability as someone genuinely having their back, someone who isn't lying in wait for them to slip up so they can punish them, but who is actively in the trenches trying to help them win, they lean into the work. They stop hiding their mistakes. They bring problems to you earlier because they know you're a spotter, not an executioner.
And the beauty of this is that Gallup says it is concrete, definable, and learnable. You don't have to be born with some innate, fierce and tender personality trait. You can practice this.
Exactly. This is the foundation of the profound culture transformation that Phoenix Performance Partners facilitates. It's the shift from fear-based leadership to love-based leadership.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate again on love-based leadership. In a cutthroat corporate boardroom, that phrase is going to get you laughed out of the room. How does the source justify that terminology in a business context?
Well, it defines it not as being soft, but by its relationship to the result. Fear-based leadership holds results over people. It uses the goal as a weapon to drive behavior through anxiety. Love-based leadership pursues results with people. It uses the goal as a shared objective that you're tackling together.
So the business result achieved at the end of the quarter might look identical on paper, like the software shipped, the revenue was hit.
Yep, the spreadsheet looks the same. But the human experience, the retention rate, and the state of the relationship that has to carry you into the next massive project, those are total opposites. You either cross the finish line together, exhausted but bonded, or you cross it standing on their neck. Same result, entirely different future for the company.
Okay, so let's make this incredibly practical for the listener. Imagine it's Monday morning. I have a project that is actively slipping. I have a team member who is dropping the ball, and I know I need to intervene today. What is the exact playbook the article recommends to put this into action right now?
The article provides a very specific weekly challenge. Here is the playbook for your Monday morning. First, pick one person and one specific result that is slipping. Before you talk to them, pause. Name your own emotional state. Be ruthlessly honest with yourself. Are you in a state of partnership or superiority?
Right. Check your ego at the door. Fix the internal orientation first.
Do not proceed with the conversation until you've mentally shifted into a state of partnership.
Okay, then what?
Then, you initiate the check-in, holding both fierceness and tenderness, and you can accomplish this in just 3 specific sentences. Sentence 1, here's what we committed to.
Okay, here's what we committed to. That is the fierce clarity. It establishes the objective ledger.
Exactly. Sentence 2, here's how I want to help you get there. That's the tender support. It proves you're in the foxhole with them, providing the resources they need.
And sentence 3.
Sentence 3, what got in the way?
Oh, that assumes positive intent.
It does. It frames the problem as an external obstacle that you are going to solve together rather than an internal character flaw of the employee.
Here's what we committed to. Here's how I want to help you get there. What got in the way? It is so remarkably clean. It completely removes the personal attack while keeping the standard incredibly high.
It brings us right back to the concept of the account. You're just reading the ledger, but you're doing it alongside someone whose success you actively and genuinely desire. It replaces judgment with curiosity.
It really does. It takes us out of those murky, anxiety-inducing diagnostic waters we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive and gives us a clear, clean framework for how to build real trust.
Yeah.
So to summarize the journey we've been on with this material, accountability is not the enemy of support. It is actually support's highest expression.
Yeah.
We have to stop choosing between being the hard-driving driver and the accommodating manager. You can and you must be fierce about the what and tender about the who.
And above all else, always check your internal emotional state for partnership before you even open your mouth.
Exactly. It completely reframes our entire professional lives. But before we wrap up today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over on your own commute or on your next walk. It builds on everything we've unpacked from this text today.
I love this part.
If holding a colleague accountable is genuinely an act of love and a reflection of your deep belief in their potential, what does it say about our relationship with ourselves when we let our own personal promises, our own habits, and our own goals quietly slip away without offering ourselves that exact same honest, tender accountability?
Man, that is a very heavy, very necessary question to sit with.
It sure is. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you on the next one.